Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews, back with another Hong Kong content review, diving into some Jackie Chan goodness for you guys. I just gotta say, I really love doing Jackie Chan videos. They're really fun. They're good palate cleanser for me. You know, we're diving into a lot of Japanese cinema, a lot of kind of other foreign movies. It's always good to get a really cool Jackie Chan film because more often than not, I'd say 4 out of 5, you're gonna get a real solid film, comedy, action, stunts, and I never have a bad time necessarily with a Jackie Chan film. Sometimes the content of the film can be disappointing, but Jackie is usually always pretty fun, high energy, high spirits. And after doing my Police Story 4 uncut video, I wanted to dive into some more of those more underrated films, the ones that have had not good releases in terms of the full version of the Hong Kong versions they originally intended. I've talked about Who Am I, which is available fully in its chronological order on YouTube of all places. And for this video, I wanted to dive into a very unappreciated and quite a surprising film in terms of Jackie Chan's kind of filmography, in terms of his more of American outing, and how fascinating it is in terms of the US release and its Hong Kong version. Film called The Protector, released in 1985, directed by James Glickenhaus, which is very much a exploitation 80s director, which only did a handful of movies during the time, including The Exterminator, I believe, which is available on Arrow, which you can buy it on its Blu-ray release or just watch it on the Arrow video player. He's done a few other movies that I have heard of, like The Shakedown, but just very much a B-movie 80s kind of director, very much a limitation of his budget. And I think this might be his highest profile film, if I'm not mistaken, apart from The Executioner, which is a bit more of a underground kind of following, which got a crappy sequel later on. For this one, it's a bit of a weird partnership in terms of that director and Jackie Chan, in terms of what we know and love him, in terms of his kind of usual kind of characters he plays. And it's very rare that we see Jackie Chan go over his comfort zone, I would say. He usually plays his fun, friendly, kind of likable, charming characters. He usually plays a kind of like the badass, but also plays the kind of loving boyfriend or the comedian. And he has so many different kind of acting kind of range and chops. And he usually plays roughly the same type of character for most of his films. Only occasionally from time to time does he break out of that and do something a bit more kind of daring or more of a performance based. And that's been explored, I think, a lot more later in his career compared to his kind of prime time, mid-80s kind of performance. If you're a Hong Kong fan or Jackie Chan enthusiast, you probably already know he dived into American kind of cinema, dived to try to crack that kind of, entry point in doing Cannonball Run 2, small cameo. He did the pretty terrible, in my personal opinion, the Big Brawl, which was from the, I think, Enter the Dragon director, which anything after Enter the Dragon, that director has been doing terrible films, and the Big Brawl was really terrible. Very much doesn't understand what Jackie Chan is good at, and as talked about previously in terms of this idea of doing action, stunts, comedy, raw emotion performances, multi-talented, big on-screen performance. That Jackie Chan is a powerhouse performance, and I've never seen such a dull, lifeless, boring take on that character, which you can tell there's sparks of creativity when maybe they allow Jackie Chan to do a few stunts or suggest a few ideas. But that film, I think, is pretty terrible, and I think Jackie Chan is wasted in that film completely. So the Big Brawl, I think, is a complete waste, and that was during the early 80s, the same time he was editing Young Master. And this was his next big project in terms of breaking into the US with The Protector from an 80s B-movie director. Probably not the best idea during the time, but definitely allowed Jackie Chan to go back to the drawing board, do Police Story, do those really cool kick-ass Hong Kong movies, venture into different kind of avenues, and then obviously come back fresh and strong with the much-loved New Line Cinema's Rush Hour, which would cement him into the US market as a star performer ready with a huge amount of bodywork behind him. Probably helped as well that he had the Miramax deal with something like Police Story 3, and there's many other films that would get the US kind of cuts and releases. So definitely an established name, way more by the time Rush Hour came along compared to what he would have done for The Protector, which was the same time as Police Story. So it all makes sense. It wasn't meant to be, but The Protector is such an interesting kind of little project in terms of a film. And it's a good film, it's something interesting when you have so much to say and there's so much to kind of dive into in terms of not just the cuts of the film, but just the performances in terms of what the film's trying to go for. And I think The Protector is something that I've appreciated and got more out of in terms of, more viewings, and it's such an interesting kind of separate piece compared to his usual kind of, filmography, which I really love. And yeah, I want to dive into this one. So before we get into the actual video review itself, I want to talk a little bit about the two different cuts and the film Whisper cut, which is the version that I watched and the one that I prefer. There is the 88 release version, which has the US version, of course, in HD, and includes the standard definition kind of footage for the Hong Kong version, which is very strange. I would have thought they would have managed to get access to that in terms of cleaning it up, maybe having two complete different cuts available for you in full HD, but unfortunately the Hong Kong version on the 88 edition is just standard definition. Two very different cuts of the same film, and they both have pros and cons. And I think the film Whisperer cut, which is available on YouTube, which basically has gone back, taken basically these two versions and put them together, essentially taking the HD version and the standard definition, put them together as one big film in terms of just under 2 hours, and also has the alternative footage, and you can switch between the two that you want in terms of the clean version and what's called the dirty version, which in terms of busting in that drug lab, and all the women basically in the US version are completely naked. In the Hong Kong version, they are more dressed, and these are alternative takes, alternative scenes for more cleaner version for the Hong Kong audience. You can definitely tell the Hong Kong version was much more of a Jackie Chan project because it has more comedy, has more stunts, there's a side character. It actually does play into the main story quite well. Has more of the bad guys in it, which is pretty cool. Also has an extra scene with our karate villain during the kind of the fishing docks, which he kind of kills someone and kind of personal to him and connected with the case. Has more of an action moment with one of the kind of the sub characters, which he's kind of interrogated the kind of the massage parlor, which kind of plays into the film later on. I definitely think it helps flesh out a little bit more in terms of the story. It helps more with the kind of the side characters. You've got a bit more Moon Lee as well, which is also in the film, and adds a bit more of a high stakes to kind of what's happening. Adding a bit more comedy, a bit more action, having a new character which has a bit more of a personal stakes, and having more of a build up to that finale, I definitely think is very appropriate. And having just more kind of establishing shots and having scenes going for a little bit longer in terms of the kind of the Jackie Chan doing his own stunts and going around in terms of the boat dock kind of sequence. Little bits here and there, little extra bits definitely help out the film in terms of its pacing and gives a little bit more of a breathing room, a bit more life into some of the motivations and some of the comedy, the action that's going on. So I definitely think all the material, all the extra stuff within the Hong Kong version, I think is very good, especially towards the third act. The US version, as I mentioned, is a little bit more streamlined. It definitely kind of cuts down some of the extra material, kind of gets to the action a bit quicker in places, which is not always to the benefit of Jackie Chan in terms of his performance, in terms of the pacing of the film. And it's surprising for the film to kind of cut out some of the golden material, some of the extra bit of content, some of the extra bit of fight scenes, just kind of trimming it down, trying to get through a bit more, which is a bit strange, especially towards the big sin of the film, which is the third act, which really trims down that third act sequence, which is really a shame and real strange, to be honest. When you've got your big showdown with your established kind of karate villain character, you would want to milk that as much as possible. You want to show all that glory and all that kick-ass fight scenes, and it definitely kind of changes itself up, not just between kind of like hand-to-hand fight scenes, but has knuckle dusters involved, has chainsaws, and surprisingly kind of trimmed it down to a real kind of minimal kind of sequence, which is really a shame, because the Hong Kong version would have it be a much more extended, just a lot more of exciting kind of showdown, which I think is definitely more appropriate to Jackie Chan's big kind of finales. Now, as mentioned, the cut that I watched was the film Whisper cut, which is available on YouTube, which he dives in and talks about these two different versions of the films and compares and contrasts, and basically is what he basically did in terms of bringing these two versions together and basically slicing these two into one movie, basically giving you the choice between a clean version, the dirty version, as mentioned towards the third act, and basically just taking all the good stuff from the Hong Kong version, putting it into the US version, much more definitive, better version of the film, definitely a hybrid of the best of both put together. And I think it definitely pays off really well. And I think it's definitely a lot more of a rewarding experience. And definitely for that third act sequence, when you get the full glory, definitely a lot more satisfying, definitely a lot more rewarding, and just for my preferred version of watching The Protector going forward. Now, in terms of the film itself, The Protector, despite which version you watch in terms of the US version, the Hong Kong version, or the film Whisperer cut, depending if you're enjoying what you're seeing on screen. And I definitely think this is a bit jarring for a typical kind of Hong Kong or Jackie Chan fan. This is definitely obviously has that kind of Hong Kong and US kind of spirit. Now it's funny, I talked about the Corruptor recently and how that has the kind of Warner Brothers kind of label, you know, a Hong Kong spirit film based in Chinatown, having Chung Yong-fat and having Mark Wahlberg kind of thing come together and doing a storyline like that. And unfortunately for that film, it's definitely a lot more of an American film. It has minuscule kind of action, and it has Chung Yong-fat doing the best he can while Wahlberg doing the best he can. But you have a weak storyline, a weak script, and it kind of falls apart. Rush Hour is the opposite of that, which definitely kind of loads its lessons from movies beforehand, and has two very charismatic performances from Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan, and a fun storyline that works for the film. Yeah, typical kind of bad guys and kind of kidnapping deals, but also has a lot of great comedy, great stunts, and has some surprising kind of moments and great chemistry, really fun chemistry. And to my surprise with this film being a US and very much a Hong Kong based location film, it only has a very minuscule amount of time in New York towards the start and the end of the film. Most of it's set within Hong Kong, which I definitely think is very deliberate in terms of its kind of international kind of feel it's going towards. The chemistry between Danny Aiello and Jackie Chan, I think, is actually pretty good here. And it definitely works with the film's tone, the storyline. It says some pretty outlandish kind of stuff, much like Jackie Chan in terms of, I never go to East Side Hong Kong without an Uzi. It's just like, what? It's just some of these lines, some of the bits of dialogue here and there is so funny and so 80s, so cheesy. The whole film is just so fun to watch in that aspect. Not to mention the fact the film is pretty goddamn good to look at. It's on location in terms of the New York sequences and the Hong Kong stuff. Real apartments, real locations, great set design as well. Various different kind of places. Even the third act, in terms of the hangar, in terms of the drug labs, some of the sequence in terms of the hotel with the lighting, neon lighting, the spa sequence, even the dock sequence when they kind of Jackie Chan's going against and trying to chase down the kind of the boats and stuff. All that looks absolutely fantastic, and it's just a real testament to these kind of films and why we love them so much. And even some of the more lesser kind of the Jackie Chan films or Hong Kong movies, you can always appreciate the fact they are filmed on location. They're actually a living, breathing city world, and you feel it. And I think that adds to the character of what this film's trying to go for. This is a mid-80s kind of rough and tough, down and dirty kind of US, New York kind of base location. We're going to go to Hong Kong, and these two cops are very much New Yorkers, and they're saying them as vulgar stuff. They're very much kind of not going for the PC kind of language for sure, and they're borderline unlikable to some extent. You know, again, as I mentioned, Jackie Chan's kind of spitting off his one-liners, being this kind of hard and badass kind of character, and definitely playing against his usual kind of type that you would see. I wouldn't see this again usually until something like Crime Story, or always much later films like The Foreigner, which would play much more grounded, darker characters. This is definitely an experiment, something a bit different. You know, can Jackie Chan do the tough kind of Dirty Harry, Clint Eastwood kind of performance? And even at the start of the film when he's swearing, Jackie Chan actually swearing, which is so bizarre and so weird, but you still get the fun nature and the full package of what Jackie Chan usually does offer, with his comedy timing, his stunts, too cool for school attitude, spontaneous kind of sequences, which you can definitely tell some of it's kind of a bit random, and has compassion, has a good performance in there, kick-ass kind of intense third act fight sequence, which he definitely plays vulnerable very well, and definitely can show he's kind of like, his efforts in terms of his fight sequences, his use of weaponry in terms of not just fight sequence, but the guns, and is all very fun, all very traditional Jackie Chan. Even the opening sequence in New York, where he's on the kind of the boat, is absolutely phenomenal. It's really excellent, and just a real daring stunt for Jackie to kind of open the film with. The villains are great. The main kind of karate kind of main henchman is also pretty fun. He kind of turns up obviously towards the third act, and the Hong Kong version has an extra scene as well. I think the storyline is simple, but definitely not really as important, because the chemistry, the performances, the location, the kind of action moments, set pieces, all really kind of what's keeping the film going and keeping the energy moving forward. The storyline is so simple in terms of, hey, there's drugs coming in from Hong Kong to the US, a situation's happened in the US, and we need you two guys to go in there as ambassadors undercover to go into Hong Kong, uncover the ring and put an end to it and stop it, essentially. I definitely think this film packs a lot of punch and has a lot of fun doing it in terms of Jackie Chan, in terms of the cast and crew members. You also got Moon Lee in the film playing a very small cameo, a big extended, of course, within the Hong Kong version. Unfortunately, she doesn't get much to do, but she is there. She's a supporting character. And it's nice to see a few recognizable faces as well from the Hong Kong kind of crowd. So overall, my thoughts and impressions on The Protector, released in 1995, I think is a pretty fun Jackie Chan film, but not a Jackie Chan film we needed at the time. It was too soon, it was too early. He needs to go back, he needs to redefine his craft, and obviously make those really awesome police story movies, do some really great projects with Sammo Hung, and definitely experiment and definitely kind of see what he's capable of, see what he can do in some of the Lucky Star cameos as well. So definitely playing with comedy, playing with action, playing with stunts, get up to a point where he could do a much more successful breakout film with Rush Hour later on. I think this was too soon for him, and I think definitely not playing to type that he usually would do, I think is also a bit risky, and he was definitely kind of, imitating and kind of seeing what was popular. Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry's popular, much more of those kind of badass kind of, smack talking kind of characters. He was kind of imitating those kind of roles and what the US market was trying to go for, and he wasn't really being himself. He wasn't being Jackie Chan that we know and love today. And I think once he embraced that, and once he was comfortable with a project, with a co-star that could also bring out different side of him and different elements, definitely complement each other quite well, I think this is actually a pretty fun film. I think this is an enjoyable film for what it is. I think the Hong Kong and the US version together in terms of the film whisper cut, the hybrid cut that I call it, is definitely my preferred version. I definitely enjoy it a lot more. I think all those extra scenes, all the extra bit of comedy and the action and the third act kind of fight scenes being extended, all that really helps the film and really makes it a lot more of an enjoyable experience in terms of what The Protector is trying to go for. Definitely enjoyable for sure. Definitely would check out the film whisper version, but even if you have the Hong Kong and a US kind of version together in terms of the 88 version, you're definitely going to enjoy it still nonetheless. It's just depending on which version you prefer ultimately. So what are your thoughts and opinions on The Protector? Please comment down below. Which version do you prefer? The US version, the Hong Kong version? Have you checked out the film Whisperer cut, the hybrid version together? We'd love to know your thoughts and impressions. Please comment down below. So meantime, guys, Amphlett Reviews, signing out.